Hello everyone, welcome back to the Grassroots Football Podcast. Today I'm joined by a special guest, Claire Hearn. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thanks. You?
Yeah, not too bad. I've been looking forward to this podcast today because it tackles a big, not a big issue, but a big part of grassroots football. And I know you're very passionate about it. So we're going to speak about child welfare and safeguarding. So for anyone that doesn't know who you are, could you just explain a little bit about what you do and how you relate to grassroots football?
Yeah. I'm Claire Hearn. I'm the lead club welfare officer and parent liaison officer at Crayford Arrows. So my role is to ensure that we're operating best practice, helping all club personnel to understand their responsibilities and duty of care to our young members. I suppose being a point of contact for our parents as well, and of course reporting any safeguarding concerns to relevant professionals.
Yeah, that's it. Summed it up pretty well. So there's what, like, for me personally, there's been some experiences where, like, I'm not too sure who the welfare officer is or who the player liaison person is. How important is it for coaches and parents within grassroots to know, like, the likes of yourselves within their clubs?
It's so important. In Crayford Arrows, we have our photos up and we promote all of our mobiles as well. We tell our managers as well to make sure they've got our numbers on their phone, because you never know when you're going to need us.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we'll jump straight into it. Has there been any sort of experiences or stories that you've encountered where, you've seen poor treatment of young children? Any stories that stick out to you?
Yeah, there's not many that I can obviously discuss openly.
Yeah.
It could be a parent complaining about the way that their child was either treated or spoken to by a manager or a coach, or they feel that their son or daughter is not getting enough playing time.
Yeah.
Generally, it's a breakdown in communication between parents and coaching team, and they just need someone to mediate a meeting to help resolve the issues away from the pitch. But I think one repeating concern that I do have quite regularly is children that are left during training and parents and carers don't return to collect the child.
Right.
We've had one incident where a teenager was left at an away ground after a match. They had no money, there was no drink, no mobile, no means of getting home. And some parents expect the managers or even other parents to drive their children back to the club. So, without even arranging this. So they can be quite challenging conversations, but normally when you point out to parents or carers and highlight possible safeguarding concerns, it doesn't normally happen again.
Yeah. And how often does these experiences occur on a sort of weekly basis?
Thankfully, not that often.
Yeah.
We're quite open and honest with our parents, and they know the expectations of the club and what the managers expect as well. So it's not regular, but we've had quite a few incidents over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah. And how can these sort of incidents be prevented or reduced? Is it a matter of like maybe parent conferences at the start of the season to make them aware, or little reminders?
It's communication. I mean, communication is key. Parents need to be involved with their children's football. The manager and the coach need to be able to relay any information to the parents, and maybe when they, at the beginning of the season or when a child starts, is everyone comes together and talks about what the boundaries and expectations are, so that everyone's quite clear.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we'll move on so slightly. In terms of the coaches and their relationship with their players, how important is it for grassroots coaches to know their players and get to understand them on a more personal level?
It's key. It's the only answer. Basically, managers and coaches, they're in for a hard time if they don't have that positive relationship with that player, you know, they're going to have it tough. So any manager, regardless of their own background and profession, is a champion and a role model for each child and young person in their team. You know, an adult that never gives up on them, believes in them and wants the best for them. I know, obviously I work in education, but I'd advise anyone that works directly with children to look up the late Rita Pearson's video. Okay. So she talks about every child needs a champion, and that's very relevant in sport. You know, managers and coaches need to know how important they are, not only to their clubs, but to the children too. You know, I would ask any manager, you know, do you really know the children? Do you know their likes and dislikes? What are their fears? What are their hobbies? Who are they outside of football? You know, children want to feel wanted and included. And a great manager would, you know, praise the one great pass and not focus on the two not so great passes.
Yeah.
So, you know, that child already knows that that pass wasn't great, and you can boost their confidence. You know, I've got one son loving life at Crayford Arrows. My husband's the head of football there, and he's also his manager. So that can be quite tricky, having that dual role. But, you know, my other son is at another local club, but that his manager has an amazing connection with every child in their team. They all have a great laugh, there's great banter, they work incredibly well together as a team, and they're very successful. But then there's that mutual respect, you know, when he talks, they listen. Although the boys all tower over him now.
Yeah, certainly. So what are the dangers that that you can spot, or what are you looking out for when a child is being abused or is suffering mentally? How can managers and coaches spot?
I get asked this every time that I present on safeguarding and child protection about warning signs of abuse. We know that safeguarding is everyone's responsibility, and sometimes people worry that they may miss something. You know, you can only go on possible indicators that something is not right, and pass any concerns or worries onto the club welfare officer for further guidance. You know, that's what we're here for. But I know mental health and well-being is a current hot topic. It's not as visible as the other categories of abuse, like physical abuse, so it can be hard to detect. But then again, this is why it's so important to have that relationship with children and to know each child. But normally, if they know the child and there's trust, there's normally two outcomes. So either the child or young person will disclose their concerns to you, which does happen, or you go with your own gut instinct that tells you something's not right, that the child could be acting differently to what they normally are. They could be withdrawn, not wanting to go home, or upset for an unknown reason. And again, this is where the manager needs to fall back on the club welfare officer. But again, it's on the flip side of that, it could well be a learning or additional need that the child or the parents have chosen not to disclose to the club. So, you know, every child, whether they have additional needs or not, is unique. But a good inclusive club will be able to support in this area and signpost. Like you said, I'm massively passionate about safeguarding. I'd love to provide more safeguarding training for all club personnel, because when you actually speak to managers and coaches on a one-to-one basis, that's when you really hear about their own anxieties over safeguarding. I know my first disclosure I had many years ago was from a child about physical abuse. You know, I didn't expect it. Luckily, I'd been trained for a few years by them. But that child lit a spark in me and made me want to go further. And currently, I'm a child welfare lead at a large primary school, looking under 650 children. Safeguarding champion at Bexley and a domestic abuse champion. So, you know, it's about being there to support not only the children but their families, and ensuring all adults that are working with children are confident and armed with all the information they need to alleviate their own anxieties around safeguarding. Sorry, Taylor, it's gone quiet.
Hello?
That's it, I can hear you again there.
It's all right. Well, we'll just cut that out.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So moving on just slightly, I know I'm definitely guilty of this, but there's times where coaches maybe forget their safeguarding training, some of the key content within it. I've still got my book that I can look back to if there ever was an incident. But do you feel like the 3-year renewal by the FA is an appropriate amount of time for coaches to renew their safeguarding knowledge?
No, safeguarding changes all the time.
Yeah.
We're becoming more aware of different incidents and, you know, different alerts that we can be mindful of. But ideally, before the beginning of every season, we should have a recap. We should remind ourselves, you know, so that we don't become complacent and forget about, you know, how to deal with disclosures, because, you know, I've known managers that have suddenly had that disclosure and have frantically thought about, oh, my safeguarding was 3 years ago. You know, what do I do? What do I say? How do I act? So I think maybe the course every 3 years, but refreshers in between would be good.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so a big question that coaches, new coaches and parent coaches always ask is, how can they appropriately deal with behaviour? How can they manage behaviour within a group? What are the do's and don'ts of these behaviour methods and techniques within the training sessions and matches?
Well, I know I've seen both male and female managers who are struggling to manage children within their team. You know, they're shouting at the top of their voice and the children are just carrying on, especially the younger players. You know, you could have Billy over there doing handstands and Freddie and Jack chasing each other around, and a stressed out manager pulling their hair out. But I think it's key to keep the children focused, keep them busy, give them little tasks. Don't assume that they will know to sit on the bench and watch the match instead of running around. I suppose in an ideal world, children in the older age group will be able to manage their own behaviour better. But if not, again, addressing it away from the rest of the team would be the best option, to see whether you can find out why they're showing that behaviour, because all behaviour is a form of communication. So I think, again, like we said before about rules and boundaries and expectations, they need to be clear for the whole team. Involve the parents as well, so that the parents can reinforce that at home. And I suppose it would be unfair to discipline the whole team if there was just 1 or 2 children not doing the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what we could be doing a lot more, is maybe looking at ourselves as coaches. What are we doing that may be causing that that certain behaviour or communication, like you said? Are there any experiences that you've had or incidents that you've seen where there's been a very positive sign of treating of children from coaches or players, more on the flip side of positive experiences of maybe abused children or such? How they help them?
So I regularly attend the club training sessions. I've seen lots of managers at Crayford Arrows who always focus on the positive, and that's really big for children. They need to have that boost in their confidence to be able to absorb what you're saying and be able to perform. I suppose a good manager would identify an area that might need improvement and give the child tasks to work on. Again, involve the parents in this as well. You know, if you have that positive relationship with the child, they will naturally want to please you and work hard.
Yeah.
And we all know if a child doesn't like you, you know, you're going to know about it. So they will communicate it through their behaviour.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to move on now. One thing I took from the safeguarding course, which is still with me now, is the dangers of the internet and, you know, examples of like photography on pitch side for parents. How important is it to sort of control them sort of situations that are happening on the sidelines?
Yeah. So for me, it is probably adults taking photos and videos is always a red flag.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've got to be mindful that these parents obviously want to record memories, but also the fact that some children within that team may be under child protection.
Yeah.
Their identity and photos are not illegally allowed to be shared on the web, which I think a lot of parents don't understand. So we always ask our parents at Crayford Arrows to ask permission from both team managers first. Managers will obviously know whether the child can or cannot be photographed or recorded. Most parents do understand when they're asked not to, you know, or you can mutually agree that it's not going to be shared on social media. But when it comes to the children, I think the nightmare for me is children's WhatsApp groups.
Right.
So I'm sure this is a nightmare for a lot of managers. It is great for people to communicate, and WhatsApp's a great way for parents as well. But then, you know, some parents choose to air their grievances. But so when children, you know, they set up their own group, then arguments happen. Someone says something unkind, and, you know, quite a lot of my meetings are about, you know, children being unkind to each other. But again, that's why the age for WhatsApp is 16 years old.
Yeah. One thing that I've come across before is the mix between maybe older children in a WhatsApp group chat with the coaches and the parents. What's your take on that? Is that appropriate, or is maybe overstepping the mark?
No, I think you need to keep those separate. I don't think managers to safeguard themselves should have WhatsApp groups just with the children.
Yeah.
And also parents tend to forget there are children within that WhatsApp group, and then things get said, you know, pictures get put on there. It just becomes very messy. So keeping them separate is obviously the best way to go forward.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, we're going to talk a bit about just the grassroots game as a whole. What can clubs, parents, coaches, players do? Well, less of the players really, to make it the safest environment possible so they can enjoy their football.
When you sign on at the beginning of the season, make sure you understand all the rules and what's expected of you, and you know how you present yourself when you're at the club as well, because you know children absorb adults' behaviour. So if they're seeing, you know, their parent shouting or swearing or arguing with their manager, that's going to break the relationship as well for them. So yeah, again, it's that communication. It's the communication, it's the relationship, it's everything. It's being clear.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Claire. You've been a fantastic guest. Definitely broadened my knowledge on safeguarding. I'm sure it'd help a lot of coaches at home watching. So thank you for coming on. Guys, if you enjoyed that episode, please give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more content like that. And I hope you're keeping safe at home and getting through this tough period. But yeah, stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you later.